Hello everyone, and this is a longer version of my how to make a pretty picture video. So the art process that I had put up, and this is just me, doing a walkthrough through my entire process. It's not technically a tutorial because there is a lot of stuff that I'm doing here which uh, I've already covered before. Like if you have seen my if you have my terrain training, then you know how to make terrains. If you have the volumetric stuff, you know how to make clouds. I have a couple of videos for vellum, so there's nothing here that is particularly new. It's just the process. Okay, so it's not really a tutorial. It's just me going through how I go about creating whatever I create. Okay, so this is the final image, and then I did a little bit of post-production on top of that. The one thing that I absolutely do not do is I don't do compositing, and I don't like doing passes. That's just a personal thing. Like for me, I mostly just like to do everything in camera. Okay, like over the years, that's what my process has become. Like I don't get the point. Like I get the point of compositing in the sense that sometimes when you have to do a specific effect which is not possible within your 3D software, like you want to add glow to just a specific object, then you want to take it out as a pass, or if you're adding it into live action, then you definitely have to do passes. But when I'm just doing my art piece, I don't see the point. Like, okay, I'm just going to take all of this and then break it up into passes and then recompose it in Photoshop. I don't get the point of that. So for me, it's like I'm taking a photograph. So I'm going to render this, and then the only thing I'm going to do in Photoshop or Lightroom is just do color grading. Like that's it. I barely even make selections. I go through like Nik software, and I do a little bit of like vignetting and like a film look or whatever, and I'm done. So for me, like that's become my process. So no matter what I have, like even if it's like tons of clouds and everything with a character, I'm just going to render everything in one go, because it's a still image. It doesn't matter if it takes 5 hours to render. I'm fine with that. Okay, so to get started, I've just been like doing chit chat for almost 3 minutes now. Okay, so just to get started, like let me break down the scene here. This is not a complicated scene. Okay, so I have 3 clouds, like which you can see now. Okay, so I have my fog here, I have the smaller clouds and the clouds in the background. And then let me just hide this stuff. So I'm going to hide the fog and the clouds and the other clouds. Okay. And then that's my landscape. And that's the girl. So the girl is from DAZ. I just picked up, like I have a pretty huge DAZ library. Like over the years I've spent like ridiculous amounts of money on DAZ. So I have a pretty decent library there. So usually when I need a character, I will mostly just pick it up from DAZ and then export it to Houdini. It depends. Like sometimes if it's a simpler scene where I don't need to model too much, I'll do everything in DAZ, and then whatever little bit I need to model, I'll take it from Houdini to DAZ. And then if it's a complicated scene, I'll go the other way around. So I'll take the basic character, do the little bit of work, and then bring it into Houdini and then do the rest. Okay, so just to show you the DAZ model, like that's her from DAZ. I did like the basic pose. I haven't modeled any of this. I just have I purchased a school dress and like whatever. So I just have all of this. I posed her and I exported her as OBJ. The nice thing is that DAZ will allow you to export either the object names as groups or the shader assignments as groups. Usually I take the shader assignments. So then I can still bring it in here and like separate the whole thing, which makes it easier to work with. So the reason for bringing her into bringing her into Houdini was because I wanted the hair to be animated. like this was very important. It's frozen right now, but I needed, like, for the image to look a little more dynamic. I wanted the hair and the skirt to sort of, like, blow in the wind. And thank God for vellum, because otherwise I wouldn't have even attempted this thing. Like, not like you couldn't do it in previous versions, but vellum is like genuinely fast and easy to set up, so it makes the process a lot more easier. Okay, so to get started, let's start with the terrain. So I'm just going to, like, hide the hair. So I didn't. Sometimes if I have a very clear shot of the terrain, I'll make the terrain and then bake out a displacement map and then use that. But in this case, it was just supposed to be, like, fairly dark. So I kept it as a geometry. It's not very, well, it's heavy enough, but it's not, like, too heavy. Okay, so I'll just go through the terrain. So what I have is, like, I have 2 height fields. And what I've also done is I scaled it down a lot. Like, it's 300 by 300, but then eventually I scaled it down to just like 30 by 30. Because the problem is that the larger your landscape gets, you have to make larger clouds and volumes. And the larger the volumes get, the longer they take to calculate and load up into the scene, like when you're rendering it. So if you have a volume that is like, say 80 by 80 by 80, like a huge volume, then it becomes, so the point is, we are in 3D, you can just scale it down to ridiculous amounts and just work with that. It causes issues with dynamics, but if you're not doing dynamics, if you're just building a scene, I made it like really tiny. So I have to deal with like smaller volumes to work with. It makes the loading process faster. Not recommended for actual things, but yeah, for still images, it works fine. Okay, so what I wanted to do was, I wanted like the ends to come up, and then there's supposed to be like a city in the middle. So that part, remains flat. Okay, sorry, before I forget. So usually the way I start any of these is with a reference, and that these are the references for, this particular image. Like, I think it's that one or that one specifically. But usually I go through, like, I'll spend like an hour a day on Pinterest, just going through references, or just like randomly browsing to see whatever, catches my eye. And it's a good place to get reference work. Okay, like for the new one that I did, the cloud thing, this is the reference for that. Okay, like I saw this really nice photograph of like, rain falling on a city, and I just wanted to, see if I could make that and, try and make an image out of that. Anyway, so so the main attraction for something like this is essentially to try and get the colors. Okay, like there isn't much here, it's mostly in silhouette. So the 2 main attractions essentially was to try and get the colors and like the city in the distance, because I was like, okay, how do you do something like that? Okay, so what I have is, I have like a pattern, which is essentially just, towards the edges and fading in the middle. And then you blur it a little bit and add some noise to lift it up. And then I sort of lifted the other side a little bit more, because I wanted that side to be slightly higher. And then this is the erosion. I haven't, like, the new erosion is pretty nice. Like, I didn't modify anything. Like if I just turn off the freeze frame, you should be able to see it. Like, it's pretty straightforward. Like pretty much out of the box, you get a very nice result nowadays. So yeah, it's not anything particularly fancy. And then I made like another one towards the back, because like I wasn't getting enough here. So I built a second one, and then, so you have like 2 of them, like, so you can see a second one in the background. And then I just scaled like I converted them to polygons using a convert height field and scaled it down. So that's my landscape. So I scaled it down by about, 90%. So, or scaled it down to like 10% of its actual size. So this is essentially what my landscape looks like. Okay, so with the girl, let me just zoom in to that. Okay, so let me just jump in here. Okay, so this is the basic model, and that comes in very huge. Okay, like the DAZ scale and the Houdini scale is massively different. So usually when I bring it in, I will scale it down by at least like 0.01. Like that's how small I usually go. So when I take a Houdini model to DAZ, I usually scale it up by 1000% for it to, fit into the scene. So it's a little tricky working with that. But anyway, so like if I come into transform, you should be able to see it. In this case, I scaled it down to a ridiculous amount, which eventually ended up causing problems with Vellum because the scene scale became too small. But yeah, I'll come to that, like what I sort of cheated. Okay, and then like if I click here, you should be able to see all the groups. See, so it brings in all the groups for like the arms and the ears and the eyelashes. The reason I like using DAZ because like I'm not a character artist, so I cannot make this to save my life. So the thing is, it allows me to pretend that I'm a character artist, and these are actually very fairly high res models. Like if you look at the mesh, it's actually very well laid out, and one of the things that DAZ does is like the basic version is free, and what you get with the free version is you get these 4K skin maps. So if you want to get started with building a character and go really quickly, DAZ is a great place to start because you get like a really good base model and you get these 4K like skin maps for color and bump and specular, like the whole thing. And you can and it's already like the UV map is already laid out, everything is laid out. Okay, like if I look at this, let me just split this. And if I look at this, if I see the UV, see, so it's actually like this one will be a mess because there'll be like a lot of overlap, but it's actually like a UDIM tile set. So if you take it to Mari or Substance Painter, this is actually pretty well laid out. And the nice thing is that all the various models that are available in DAZ are essentially morphs of the base character. So the UVs never change. So any other skin texture that you have will automatically fit on any character. So it makes the process really fast. Okay, so you don't need to paint a new skin map, or you don't need to do UVs again and again, and it's fully rigged. So you can that becomes pretty easy. Anyways, this is not really a DAZ lesson, but anyway, so this is it. And then I deleted the path because sometimes like the shader path remains in there, so you just get rid of it. Anyway, so then I have for the hair, I kind of just kept it to that much and brought it out. Okay, so so first we'll take a look at the skirt and then we'll take a look at the hair. So I kind of separated the skirt out so that I could do vellum, or I could do like a simulation on that. And what I like, the reason why it's not animating is because I did a time shift and I froze it at frame 20. Okay, so which is why you're not getting an animation. Like see that's frozen. But yeah, so I have like the basic skirt and actually I kind of deleted a little bit more. But yeah, so I have like a group here for just the top, and then it's simple. Like I just did a vellum on this, like a vellum cloth solver, and picked up the roots. And then what happened was, like, because this is so small, the gravity was just like dragging it down, far too much. So what I ended up doing was I reduced the gravity down to something like 0.1, which is like a ridiculously tiny amount. But yeah, so if you come in to see, this is like, minus 0.1 is the gravity. And I have like a wind in there. All the values are like really tiny because otherwise it would just go completely nuts. So yeah, so if I play through this, you'll see like it kind of blowing. And I think I froze it at, what did I freeze it at? 20? Yeah, 20. So I froze it at 20. And then one of the nice things that is there is, because this is quite distorted, is you get something called vellum post process, which allows you to, like do a little bit of smoothing. See, so if you increase this, you can actually do a little bit of smoothing on it. And then it also has inbuilt subdivision. So I gave it like a subdivision. And so that gives you the skirt. And then I just, as I said, like I froze it at frame 20. And then this is the hair. So the hair is again like the same thing that I'm doing here, which is I'm freezing it at frame 20. But just coming to like the basic shape of it is, where is it? Yeah, so this is my basic, hair generate, and I kind of like shaped the guides on both sides. And then once you've shaped it, I am very bad at layout. So this is how my node tree usually looks like when I'm not teaching. So yeah, this is not fun. I am very disorganized if you haven't realized that already. And then like you merge everything together and bring it into Vellum, and then that's the Vellum solver. So it's just, again, like I have a wind in there. Let me jump in. Yeah, so there's like a wind in there, again, like fairly small values. And if I play this, there you go, like let me come to the sides. Yeah, see, so this is, so pick a frame that you like and then just freeze it at that frame. And then once I've done that, I kind of separated them out again. And so this is the hair on one side and this is the hair on the other side with like a little bit of clumping. Like it's not, anything particularly complex. And then you find a time shift and you just, freeze it to that particular frame. Okay, so this is essentially it. Now here is a interesting little, here's an interesting little tidbit about this particular art piece. There is only one single material. Okay, like the whole thing was supposed to be a silhouette, and I didn't see any reason of, why I should do materials for the whole thing. So it's just one single material, like a diffuse shader, which is just dark gray. That's it. There's like nothing else in there. So I have everything hidden. I'm going to hide the instances as well. So let me hit a render and see what we get. So that's basically it. Like, that's basically what I have. So I'm going to just jump in here and, let me just see if I can do something here. I don't want to modify. Okay, I'll modify this. So anyway, so what I've done is like I have like a time and kind of decide like the north offset to sort of spin it around, to where you want the sun from. The thing I do with Octane is I use the older daylight model. Like there are about 4 daylight models within Octane. So you have like the old daylight model, which looks kind of like crap. And then you have the new daylight model, you have the Nishita daylight. Okay, and then you have the absolute newest one, which is called the planetary environment. Now, the reason I use the new daylight model is because it allows you to sort of art direct your sky and sunset color. Okay, so if you want it to be, like more orangish or, whatever, then you can actually do that. If you keep it to like Nishita, you cannot change the colors. Okay, like whatever is fixed. Like these colors no longer have, any impact. So which is good if you're trying to do it realistic, but I don't want to do realistic. Like I was looking at this and I was like, okay, these are the colors that I want. So usually I'll end up using, the new daylight model. And then the sky turbidity allows you to sort of like, blend in the sunset color more into the sky. So then, so I can actually like, completely color it whichever way I want. So if you want to have like a really art directed sky, then this is sort of how you go about doing it. The render settings are fairly simple. Like I'm not doing anything too much. I have a diffuse depth of 4 that's primarily for volumes, because you can usually work with 2, but I just wanted the clouds to light up a little more. So the diffuse depth is 4. Otherwise it's, fairly straightforward. Okay. So then we have, let me show you the city lights, because that was like, I thought it would be tricky, turned out to be simpler than what I was expecting it to be. What I have is I have a small sphere, which is essentially just copied onto, there you go. Okay, so what I did was fairly simple. I took a grid and I did a Voronoi pattern on it with like a fairly big offset. So if you come in here, see like a cut offset. So I made it fairly big, and then I just scattered points on them. Scattered points and then did like a p scale randomize. Okay, and then just copied a sphere on that. So if you just zoom in here, you'll see, yeah, see, so you just have like these tiny spheres, and then in the material, it's just like I'm using random. There's a Octane node called random colors. If you're in Redshift or Arnold, you can give random colors to the instances and then pick that up. In Octane, you have this thing called random colors, and then I pushed it through a gradient, okay, of just like, different colors, and that goes into the emitter. So the emitter is not emitting any light. It's just visible on specular, but it's not visible on diffuse. And so if I render this, it should give you the idea. See, and if you lower the, if you lower the f-stop, it should actually look pretty good. Like if you lower it down, see, if you want to do like very fancy bokeh, so you'll get like, you can probably like reduce the amount a little bit more. The star goes for a toss because that also becomes, that's supposed to be a star up there. But yeah, see, so you can get some really nice bokeh as well if you want. Anyway, this is supposed to be like fairly high because it was meant to be relatively clear. So this is, that's how you do city lights. You kind of just like, if you're doing stuff like this, you cheat as much as you can. Like, well, that's all of 3D anyways. You just cheat as much as you can. But yeah, like you don't need to build a city. It's not going to be seen anyways. So who cares? Okay, now let's come to the interesting stuff, which is the fog. Now, for any of you who have sort of asked me, how to build fog or how to build clouds, you can go through my volumetrics training. Okay, so because the point is, even though that was built for Octane, the first part of that mostly covers, let me just see, where is it? Like the basic one, it covers the rendering in Octane, but what it also covers is how to build custom volumes. Okay, so if you disregard the shader part, like it's all in one video, but all the videos cover how to build a custom volume. Like that's the core of it. So it covers everything. Like it covers how to build fog and clouds and nebulas and any kind, even custom volumetric lights if you want to do that. Okay, and then you just have to, all you'll have to do is like build a shader in Redshift or Arnold or whatever. And if you are from another software, you can also export it out as VDB. So if you want to take it to Cinema 4D or you want to take it to Max or whatever, you can just build the basic cloud and export it as VDB and use it, wherever you want. The whole thing is fairly, yeah. So essentially, like this is where I already have all of this. So you can always just, buy my stuff because I like money. Anyways, so okay. Okay, so just to sort of like simply explain it, the way it works is I make like you make your box, okay, and then you convert it to cloud, and you can adjust your density. In this case, I have a density of 1, and then what I do is I multiply it with the bounding box. So I take the bounding box of it, and I take X, Y, and Z, create 3 curves, and multiply it with the density. So what that does is it allows you to, like control the, the distance fog and the height if you want to, how dense is it supposed to be, like at the base. Okay, so you can like control that, and then you can also control it sideways. So if I keep this here, and then I can just say, okay, I don't want anything on the side, so I can control the sides. So rather than depending upon, because Octane has this thing called medium, which is built into the environment node, and then Redshift also has something called volume environment, which is built into the render or render settings itself. But they don't allow you, that much of artistic control of like, okay, I want the fog to start exactly at this point and then end at that point, and then I want to move it around a little bit and do crazy stuff with it. This way you can build your own fog and then just place it wherever you want. Okay, and then I gave it a little bit of noise. So what this does is it allows me to have like an exactly placed fog. And then this is optional. Like usually I'll just give it like a color and work with that. But in this case, because I wanted, like let it render. Yeah, so you can see like the distant mountains become blue. So that is through an emission. Okay, so the volume is actually glowing a little bit, which is why you're getting that. Okay, so what I've done is if you come into volumes, yeah, it's OpenVDB. No, hold, where the hell am I? Okay, yeah, there. Okay, fine. Yeah, so if you come into volumes and you'll see like the emission grid is also kept to density. Okay, because there's no like temperature or anything in there. So the emission grid is also density. So let me just show you the material. Usually it's just playing with absorption color and the scattering color. So this is, the scattering color is usually the opposite of what color you want. Okay, so if I keep it to blue, you'll see that it becomes orangish. If I keep it to orange, it will become, bluish. So I wanted like, because this is like pink and purple, so I kept it to green. So it gives you that particular color. And then in the emission texture, you'll see like it is. So if I make it 0, see, that's what you get. So what I wanted was just for it to glow a little bit. So you give it like a little bit of a glow, so you get like that distance. Like when you're painting stuff, then usually you start painting a fog and then stuff in the distance becomes bluer. So this is essentially how you do that. Yeah, and then there's also like a ramp here. But yeah, so if I want to just control like, how much it should glow in the distance, it should just be like a little bit. So I can just control that. I'm not going through the shaders. As I said, like this is not a tutorial, just a rough overview. Okay, so this is the fog. And then I have like, these are the higher clouds, which again, like it's a box and turn it into clouds. And then I did like a volume warp. Okay, so I'm just multiplying it with a turbulent noise. Okay, like I stretch out the turbulent noise a little bit. And then I further multiply it again with like a cloud noise. Because a cloud noise doesn't allow you to make like holes in the middle. Okay, like it directly just does this. So use a volume noise to break it up and then a cloud noise to give it additional detail. Yeah, and then you like, it doesn't need to be horizontal to the ground or anything. You just place it any which way you feel like. So it looks nice. And yeah, the shader is like very low density. So there is, again, like there's a scattering color, which is again kept to like a green. So I can, specify the color value of it. It's not really having that much of an effect. Okay. But the basic density is very, very low. Like it's 0.05. Okay, like because if you keep it too high, it'll just look like crap. So it's just supposed to be like just there in the background. So it's like, it's very low density and the absorption color is to pink. And then lastly, I have, like the mid-level clouds, which I did a little bit of modeling. Okay. Yeah, let me just see. I'll just hide the other stuff. Yeah. So the way I do it usually again, so you take a box. Okay. This is a little more involved and you take like an ISO offset. So I can scatter points in the middle and then you copy some spheres on it. And then you take an edit and you just stretch it out to give it the kind of shape that you want. And then the rest is simple. You take a cloud, you convert it to clouds. And in this case, I also did like, did I do a scatter shape? Yeah. So you do like secondary shapes. See, so you scatter, like more shapes on top. And then I did the same fog fall off because I wanted the sides to kind of fade out a little. And then you do a noise. And let me, yeah, anyways, so forget that. Okay. And so I have like two of them. I have like one here and one there. And then in order to merge them together, I use a volume mix, which is the same as like a VDB combine. So you just take a volume mix and do an add. Because Octane has this issue. If you try to overlap polygons, you sometimes end up seeing like a render of the bounding box. It's very difficult to get rid of that. So what I realized was like, rather than having like two separate clouds, which I'll try to overlap and they'll cause issues, you just place them and then you just add them together. So when you add them together, they become a single bounding box. So you're not going to have any problems then. Okay, because it's a single volume. Okay, and so if I come into the camera, it's just like the shader for this again is relatively simple. I've kind of gotten used to it because I tend to do a fair bit of stuff with volumes, and like the more volumes you throw in, it starts to get a little bit slower. Even though this is a lot faster than Octane 3 used to be, like Octane 4 is way more faster. But yeah, like some of my images will end up taking like a really long time. Like if I come in here and I don't know, like which one? Like this one again, like this was a really big volume, so it would take a little bit of time to load up. Okay, because this is about 400 by 400, the plane. So the cloud is about 80 by 80. So again, like as I said, not a good thing to do. And yeah, like this one again, these were fairly big volumes. So these would take a little bit of time to load up. And I had, yeah, this one. This would load up fast, but Octane would take about like 50 seconds to just calculate the light and bring everything, because this is just volumes, right? Like there is, except for like that tiny little thing over there, there is almost no solid geometry in this entire scene. It's just volumes. So it would die trying to calculate through this. And it was about like 4 light bounces. Yeah, not recommended to do this. But yeah, so the more volumes you have, the longer it takes to calculate. Anyways, as I said, like I don't composite. You know, I just do not do that. Like I'm not interested. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. You take 20 minutes to render this, or like just to build up the image. I think the final render time on this was about 50 minutes. I didn't render it too big. Let me just see what's the actual size on this. File info. Yeah, it's 1600 by 2000. This is not a big image, because I was like, okay, I don't have the patience to render this at 4K. It'll take hours to do it. And this was like, if you see the voxels here, this is because the cloud was actually really small and I scaled it up. You know, so when I scaled it up, you start to see volumes. So usually that's not recommended. If you have a very tiny, like try to build the cloud at the size that you want it to be in your scene. It's okay to scale it down. But if you take a tiny cloud and try to scale it up, you're going to see voxels. It's going to be problematic. So yeah, like that's basically it. I don't know if this is helpful. Okay, like a lot of people asked me, you know, could you do a longer video? And I wasn't sure how to go about doing it. So I've been randomly talking for like 30-35 minutes now. But yeah, with this one, I think I might just make a training video out of this, because this covers quite a few things. Like it has volumes and scattering and terrains and, you know, stuff. So I just might make a small training video out of this if anyone is interested. But yeah, this is basically it. I won't go through the color grading process. I just said, like, as I said, I use like Nik software. You can just do a Google search for it. There's a free version that you can get, which is the older version. And then the newer one is available from DxO. Like DxO Mark bought Nik software. Okay, like in the middle, Google had bought it and then they made it free, but then they weren't doing anything with it. And then I think eventually, like a few months back, DxO bought it, and so now they are building paid versions for it again. But the original version is still available for download. Like the 1.2.15, you'll get it for download for free from somewhere. And it works in Photoshop, it works in Affinity, it works in Lightwave. It's a nice software to have. But yeah, this is basically it. There isn't much in here, but I hope this was useful to somebody. But yeah, if you have any questions about this, you can ask me. I'll try my best to answer. So once again, I hope this was useful.